Welcome, everyone. We are now on day 3 of our virtual summit for World Toilet Week. And our theme of World Toilet Week at the Toilet Board Coalition is transformation via the sanitation economy. I'm Cheryl Hicks, the Executive Director of the Toilet Board Coalition, and really pleased now to be talking about the third sphere of our sanitation economy, the smart sanitation economy. And we have a program lined up, which I won't steal the thunder of our amazing panel that we have here, what you're going to hear next. But I did want to come in and talk a little bit about how we got here, the Toilet Board Coalition partnering with the European Space Agency, which is surprising to many. And it was surprising to us at the beginning as well. But we're really excited about this budding partnership between the Toilet Board Coalition and the European Space Agency. We came together about a year ago to talk about the possibilities of how space technologies could be used to address the global sanitation crisis. And I'll hand it over now to my colleague Michael Lindenmayer, who will interview Davide Coppola from the European Space Agency and hear what we've been discussing and implementing over this year.
Thanks, Cheryl, for that warm introduction. And yes, space and sanitation, it's an incredible combination. And we're very thankful to have Davide with us here today. As Cheryl said, I'm Michael Lindenmayer, and I'm the co-lead for Toilet Board's Coalition Smart Sanitation and Digital Health Efforts. And we have Davide, who is in the leadership team over at the European Space Agency and is helping think through innovative partnerships where private sector can work with the European Space Agency network of space industry. And we're very thankful that we're going to be able to have a chat today. So the way that this is going to go is we're going to exchange some different thoughts and questions that we had. And I will start out asking you, Davide, first off, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael Seri, for inviting us. It's a pleasure being here with you today and have the opportunity to share this cooperation, this exciting cooperation between the European Space Agency and the Toilet Board Coalition.
Thank you. Davide, I think the first thing that would help people understand sort of how the European Space Agency is thinking about this is to talk about and help explain and share how the European Space Agency is taking some of its space technology back down to Earth. Could you talk a little bit about that thought process?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And indeed, the European Space Agency is very well known for our effort in the domain of R&D related to space technology in general, which is an important part of our job and our mandate. At the same time, in parallel to that, we are also running several programs dealing with the development of applications. So here we are looking at ways, sustainable ways to basically reuse, if you want, the technology that is being flown in outer space together with data from the satellite to provide services for the benefit of society. And so that's in particular the work that I'm doing at the European Space Agency for the European Space Agency business applications, which indeed tries to help companies and businesses in reusing space capabilities and bringing them down to Earth.
Great, Davide, thank you. And you know, when one thinks about space, it's a pretty hostile environment for human beings. So you must have to do some pretty creative innovations and technology. Could you talk just a little bit about some of the space technology that you think is relevant towards keeping astronauts safe and healthy and how that might tie into sanitation?
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed, as many of us already know, I suppose, I mean, there is, I think it all starts with a very strong selection criteria for the astronauts who should prove themselves to be extremely healthy before being able to, you know, to fly to the ISS. But all that, after that, once the mission is in place, there are a number of measures that are put in place in order to monitor the health of the astronaut before the flight takes place, during and after the flight. And looking at what happens in the ISS, obviously there are systems monitoring the health of the astronauts, monitoring also the condition of the atmosphere in the ISS and making sure that, you know, that people are kept healthy and safe. And some of this technology can also be reused for applications on the ground clearly, and some of these, surprisingly enough, have been used also for application for in the area of the developing economies. So there is a point about being able to reuse technology that one at first could think is extremely expensive, but in some cases we've been able to prove that some of this technology can also be used sustainably for applications in developing economies.
Well, you know, that's a really interesting point you make, Davide. You know, people may say it's expensive, but one of the things that, you know, industry should take into consideration is that a lot has already been invested. So that next wave of innovation either can be advancements in the current ones that exist, or finding ways to miniaturize or make them more affordable. And it's also very encouraging to hear that the European Space Agency is thinking about how these technologies could be very useful in these emerging markets. In fact, it may allow some of them to leapfrog some of the systems that are already in place. And at the Toilet Board Coalition, you know, we see the sanitation economy as one of the most vibrant spaces for innovation, as there's going to be such a large scale rollout of sanitation systems around the world. It's far better that they be smart systems in place. And one of the things that we think about when we're thinking about smart sanitation is also the circular economy. And it would be great to hear your thoughts, you know, Davide, about how you see, you know, the circular economy at the ESA and how, you know, sanitation, this partnership together is sort of enabling that.
Yeah, that's where the discussion started, like Cheryl said 1 year ago, when we first had the opportunity to meet and start exploring this, let's say, cooperation between the European Space Agency and the Toilet Board Coalition. It was immediately clear for us there were a number of synergy. Firstly, there is an interest, I would say, on the societal dimension, because sanitation is, as we all know, it's an unfortunate issue for many people. So there is, of course, an interest from the European Space Agency in also contributing to this kind of goals, obviously. But looking at it, if you want, from a technological perspective, how space can help sanitation, circular sanitation economy, I mean, there are many different aspects, particularly relating to agricultural activity, where the data from Earth observation satellites are being used for helping improve the productivity. And so there are an array of opportunities there that are clearly linked with the circular sanitation economies. And if you would like to have some, I don't know, some practical example, I mean, when we talk about agriculture, when we talk about sanitation, there is a lot of demand with respect to environmental information that can be provided from Earth observation satellites. And like you said here, we are not reinventing anything new. These things have been there since several years. And in some cases, this data can also be downloaded free of charge. All depends on the resolution, on the kind of performances that we are looking for. So in the area of agriculture, I mean, space data clearly is an enabler in helping people understanding the productivity of a given area, to have them, for instance, fertilizing, and and doing all these with keeping an eye from space is very effective, particularly when you are working in remote locations, or when you want just to have a broad picture what is happening in a given area. So in that sense, clearly there is an opportunity in the circular sanitation economy, looking at agriculture, but also looking at logistic issues, obviously. Because also there, I mean, there is an opportunity to monitor, to provide support on the logistics of certain areas. Let it be, for instance, monitoring the condition of the roads after extreme weather events, or any kind of additional check that one might want to do. So all these, once again, are things that are available, just need to be used, and that's why we think there are so many opportunities that have just been unexplored until now. So, and that's basically where we are building the cooperation with the Toilet Board Coalition.
You know, Davide, I think it's really helpful for our listeners to understand. I know it's your day-to-day reality, but it sounds like there's a treasure trove of data that exists. And it sounds like, you know, when you talk about space, I think you must be referring to sort of that geospatial data, you know, Earth maps. Can you give us some sense of sort of like how many satellites the ESA has, and sort of how often do we have a picture of the Earth that they cover, to give people sort of a sense of actually what's possible on that side?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will start by saying that obviously, I mean, discussing this in detail will take a long time. So I will just try to give you some first ideas. First of all, in the context of sanitation and the circular sanitation economy, we are looking at, with I think interest on the utilization of Earth observation data on topics such as landscape, land use, water, and all, let's say, a set of parameters that are routinely monitored by Earth observation satellites. To answer to your question, looking at the space data capabilities, there are missions like Copernicus, which are being supported by the European Space Agency, that can provide this kind of data. And if you would ask about the resolution, I mean, I would actually extend this conversation to what is available beyond what the European Space Agency has. And clearly, what the European Space Agency is supporting. Sorry, clearly, these satellites are usually not geostationary, which means that they are not fixed with respect to a point on the Earth. So there's let's say some parameters to be taken into account concerning the revisit time. So how often you will be able to get an image from the same satellite over a specific point on Earth. The good news is that there are constellation satellites, so that are orbiting around the Earth. So basically, they are, depending on the cost, depending on the provider, you could think of everything in the range from daily to weeks, depending on the kind of constellation and the different providers, if they are institutional or more, so to say, commercial providers. So this is what we have to think of, and there is no shortage of opportunity of saying what can be used in terms of information and data from this satellite, and use it in the context of circular sanitation or digital health, for instance.
Well, and digital health is a really interesting one, Davide, that you mentioned there. So we've talked about the circular economy, and at the Toilet Board Coalition, one of our main goals is to recover as many of the nutrients as possible, to really fully understand the benefits of using those versus others. So I think, you know, the satellite data over time will be able to show crop health and states, and also, as you said, logistics. So knowing how to move these things about and around will be important. But one of the things that we've talked about at Smart Sanitation is linking up sensors on the ground with what's up in space, and then also using some of those sensors that have been developed for space back down on Earth. And one of the things that you alluded to earlier was the importance of making sure that the astronauts are fit. But in a sense, we're all on one big spaceship, right, Earth, and you want everyone to be healthy. And one of the things that we're really interested in is the power and the capability of smart sanitation to become one of the true front lines for defending against infectious disease outbreaks. And one of the things I'd like to link there back to you and discuss that with you is, one are the sensors that can be in the toilet or near the toilet that can do detection, much like you have to do in space. You have both in toilet sensors as well as in the environment. So you're measuring both things. But then on Earth, one of the things that, you know, is a great predictor of infectious disease outbreak is weather. And it seems to me that if we can link the space data that you have all the way down to the ground, you would be able to arrive at some sort of precision surveillance system for disease outbreak. Does that sound right to you? What are your thoughts about that? Yeah,
absolutely. And I would start basically, I could add to that, that if you would think of a network of sensors, of smart sensors in a city, basically, I think there is an opportunity there to use space data. And I would say it maybe in in two ways. Firstly, I think could be not practical or not sustainable to think of providing smart sensors for each and every toilet or new toilet installation in a city. So so there is a technical issue there, and obviously there is a sustainability issue in terms of affordability, if you want. So that's one element. So at the very end of the day, that means that practically you are going to have gaps. You're going to have a network of sensors, which yes, gives you some sample data in a city, so to say, which is fine, but needs to be somehow complemented. So you need to be able to fill the gap. That's where I think space technology could play a role, because at the very end of the day, coming back to your question on GIS systems, it's like having, I think, a set of dots on a map in which you have some kind of sample data on diseases, aggregated data, obviously. Now, of course, unless you want to provide all the toilets with this kind of sensors, you would have to extrapolate this data over space and time. And here we are talking about data on diseases that are clearly linked once again to environmental parameters. Could be water, could be again landscape, land use, and depending on the disease, there are an array of environmental factors that affect the spread of disease. And once again, these are the same factors that can be monitored through the use of satellite data. So what I'm aiming at basically is very simple. By using space data, you can firstly supposedly reduce the number of sensors that have to be deployed to effectively monitor a city or a large areas, to say. And secondly, because of the same, you are able to use space data to extrapolate these sample data over space and time, eventually setting up a kind of predictive capability. That's one of the topics that we have put forward in the feasibility study that we are about to initiate, which is something we're cooperating with the Toilet Board Coalition. So the main idea is really to look at the opportunities to utilize space data to set up these kind of capabilities.
Davide, this is very exciting for anyone who manages a city and is listening in. I think when the Toilet Board Coalition has a collaboration and a partnership also with the city of Pune, as Cheryl had mentioned, and this is something which is an extraordinary opportunity as they want to be the world's first smart sanitation city. And we heard earlier in the day from Sunil and his colleagues in the city of Pune about that. And so one of the things that we're really excited to see in our partnership as that emerges are smart city level technologies. And in places like India, where they have over 100 smart cities in motion, this can be a real game changer. So we're very thankful that we have this partnership with you to unlock some of those different potentials and to draw in the private sector to help come up with really good solutions so that they can work with different cities in delivering those. Because one of the other things that I think we should talk about is, wow, imagine that you have all this data being generated plus all the data that you already have. It seems to me that we're going to need new and different ways to process that much information. And there's all these advances being made in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Could you talk a little bit about the European Space Agency's interest in AI and advancing the private sector response to that as well?
Yes, it's a very interesting question for which I'm afraid there are different let's say ways and approaches that we are following. From some that might sound a little bit futuristic, like using or considering the application of artificial intelligence for future lunar mission is something that is happening as well. So understanding also how to to support the astronaut and free a little bit of their time by applying machine learning, and that's something which is being done or started as we speak. And then there is another element. I mean, there are many things that that justify our interest in artificial intelligence and machine learning. There is also the interest in improving the capability of the assets that are being flown in space by using machine learning and artificial intelligence, obviously, because there is, again, an opportunity to do some analysis of historical data to improve the operation efficiency for the next missions. And a little bit more down to earth, I would say. I mean, looking at the quantity of data that is generated by Earth observation satellite, there is definitely an opportunity there to make smart use of this data. So once again, here we're looking at the quantity of data and the opportunity to apply machine learning to extract the information you really need. And so that's basically where we, let's say, we are also closely working with the feasibility study we mentioned before, as we believe that, I mean, in the long run, one should expect to see a huge quantity of data being collected by this network of sensors, of smart sensors that will be deployed. And so there will be also an opportunity to learn from these data sets. And that's once again where we see the need for AI and machine learning techniques that could unlock, additional services and could really unlock the value of this data that will be collected once these networks are being deployed.
One of the things, Davide, that's really exciting about that is that this is the kind of technology that is relevant worldwide. So we talk about, the technology being used in some of these emergent markets or low cost, where you need radical affordability. But you can also imagine, people are traveling in airplanes these days, the circulation of different diseases are worldwide now. So being able to have sort of a worldwide network would really allow humanity to get a jump on that. And one of the things that the Toilet Board Coalition we're always asking ourselves is how could the private sector pick this up and run with it? What are different use cases that they might have in mind? And so one of the ones that we've been looking at is our, pharmaceutical companies that can generate vaccines. Right now, when we produce vaccines, it's sort of for a last year's bug, if you will. And something like Smart Sanitation Network would allow us to start, getting more and closer to real-time production of vaccines that are relevant. And also, and we'll talk about this in the next session, not all viruses are the same, right? These things are always adapting and adjusting. So a smart sanitation network linked with different space technologies could really give us a jump on some of these different bugs and allow the private sector to come in. And also, when you think about, it's not just AI and machine learning, those are data analytic companies who could really provide useful insights for industry, for cities, for citizens. So it's very exciting. Davide, one of the things that I think would be helpful for people to also understand is to have some view on how the European Space Agency actually works with the private sector. We alluded to it in the beginning, but it is really a unique opportunity that the Toilet Board Coalition and the ESA came together. But one of our calls at the Toilet Board Coalition, also in partnership with you and this tender, was to draw out other private sector players. So if you could just briefly describe that journey for people, I think it would be very helpful. So as we advance together and do more collaborations, we can invite more private sector players to participate in this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And indeed, we are, as the European Space Agency, as a business application team, which is the one cooperating with the Toilet Board Coalition on the invitation to tender you mentioned. Indeed, our goal is really to help businesses in developing and applications that combine any kind of space data. And there, the ultimate goal is to help businesses to come to a sustainable solution. So meaning something that has a positive impact to society and can be sustained also from an economic standpoint. And there, as a European Space Agency business application, we offer our financial support together with other partners in developing these project ideas from feasibility study stage, if you want. So really de-risking the technical and economic and sustainability aspects related to an idea on a given service, which can then be followed by pilots and a demonstration, which can also financially support and co-fund. And once again, all that is meant to really establish or help companies and stakeholders to establish capabilities that can be used in the long run in a sustainable way. So our support and our role into this private sector is to help, firstly, I would say financially, by joining forces with other players and allocating financial resources for this kind of initiative, which is what is already happening for the invitation to tender was mentioned earlier on. And secondly, we have a network of partners and businesses that are cooperating with us, which can contribute in a very different way. And I would say the third element is that as a European Space Agency business application team, we have the know-how also to help stakeholders, users on what space could mean to them. So also helping, to take probably the right decisions. And last but not least, as we are actually doing today, we are also very keen in helping reaching out to players, to new players, and in general, creating some awareness about what space can do in a given domain. And this, I think, is also an important element of the partnership that we have with the Toilet Board Coalition.
Thanks, Davide. At the Toilet Board Coalition, we value our members highly, and the real power of it is actually, in the name itself. It's a coalition, so different players offer different things to the table. One last thing I think that would be really helpful, just one further note on the thing that we just discussed, which is you have indicated in our other conversations that collaboration is something which is possible. So as people come to the sanitation opportunities, while there does need to be an anchor industry in Europe that's helping lead that charge, can you briefly describe how people can come together in coalitions or collaborations to enter into this, and how that's actually in fact happening as we look at the current tender we have with you on smart sanitation?
So indeed, I think we can look at it from a perspective of technology suppliers and service providers, which is so to say what is typically selected through an invitation to tender, like the one we have already published in cooperation with the Toilet Board Coalition. In parallel to that, we usually ask the consortia to bring in new ideas, also in this case related to sanitation, and new ideas come together with sponsors of the idea, users and customers of the application idea that has been brought forward by the industrial team. So I think in this perspective, there is also an opportunity to to think of other applications or other opportunities about utilizing space for sanitation that we didn't think of together at the beginning. And this means basically two things: receiving the idea first, obviously, which is interesting in itself, and secondly, entering in contact with the stakeholders that are active in sanitation who thought that the idea is extremely relevant for the purpose of sanitation. So by means of by running this kind of tender and this kind of studies, we eventually are able to bring in the supplier of the technology, but also new ideas and applications requirements from new customers and users that are active in sanitation. And that's, I think, is also an important asset that we are exploring together.
Davide, that is really exciting. And one of the things, so for us to wrap here today, I think, is just what you said. So we really encourage at the Toilet Board Coalition for people to not only think of this as a study, but we have a living environment, a marketplace in which to try this out right now in the city of Pune. So this is something that is very real, practical, and present. I also really appreciate that you talked about people thinking about the current technology, but in a new framework. So again, if people are interested in learning more about what that framework is, you can go to the toiletboard.org and see more about the sanitation economy. And we're very thankful for the partnership we have with the European Space Agency. And Davide, we're really thankful for you taking the time today to share your insights, to encourage other minds, players, and industry to join in this adventure. And we've really enjoyed our partnership today and look forward to it and moving into the future. Thanks for your time today.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you, Davide, and looking forward to the announcements of our of the successful applicants of the first tender between the European Space Agency and Toilet Board Coalition on smart sanitation, and that should be coming soon.
Indeed, and I think we will inform everyone about the outcome of this as soon as this has been completed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.